Welcome back from Expo. Whether or not you were there, it was a great show. Naturally, New York had a huge presence. We had a dedicated pavilion. We had hosted an event to 300 attendees. It was definitely the largest we've ever had and pretty successful, even being outside of the greater New York area, right? We are definitely growing our presence in the natural product space. So thank you to Ampla for again to host our next phase of the Expo Insights. I'm also very excited to introduce Eric Schnell, Heather Terry, and Neil. I'm going to refer, because I will butcher your last name, from Jasberry on the panel. I'm going to kick it over to Mike Brillo, who's going to be moderating it. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to drop them in the chat or DM me directly. And this is being recorded, so if you do have to drop off, you will find it on our YouTube channel, probably by end of week. All right, so without further ado, Mike, take it away.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this afternoon. We did this a couple of months ago in March around Expo West, and I found it to be like super productive recap and sort of analysis of the space. And so we wanted to bring it back for Expo East. I think to start it all off, my name is Mike. I lead marketing at Ampla. We're a financial technology company focused on lending and digital banking solutions. I'll sort of let the panelists introduce themselves to the extent that they haven't shared their background yet or that you guys don't know them. Eric, maybe we could kick it off with you.
Hey there, I'm Eric Schnell. This was my 27th Expo East show. Yes, I've been in the industry since I got out of college and joined the natural foods movement. So exciting, but also bittersweet last show. But I've been a serial food and beverage entrepreneur my entire career. Co-founded the first organic soft drink brand in 2002 called Steez, and have been involved in the plant-based movement and better for you beverage movement my whole career, helping founders and helping stand up brands that have been very successful nationally. In 2016, I co-founded with 24 partners an agency called BeyondBrands. We're a strategic consulting group, really focused on the early stage concept to kind of Series A years, where we support our young brands and our founders with a myriad of different levels of service, as well as partnership and equity. So super excited to be here. And I'm also the co-chair of Naturally New York.
Okay, do you want to go?
Sure. So Jay Puentes, I am one of the sales leaders at Ampla. We're essentially a fintech platform partnered with many of the leading CPG brands nationwide. We help with all funding related financial needs. Been in the financial space for almost a decade. So very, very thankful to have attended both West and East, two very different shows. East was a lot of fun. So excited to talk on that.
Neil, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Neil. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Jasberry. We are a producer of the world's first superfood rice that's better for you, the farmer, and the planet. I'm happy to be here.
And he won Pitch Slam. He's being shy.
I was just about to say
Thanks,
that.
Eric.
Congratulations.
And Heather, would you like to go?
I think I'm last. Yes. I'm Heather Terry. I'm the founder and CEO of GoodSAM Foods. We work solely in regeneratively farmed systems around the world directly with farmers. We cut all the middlemen out of our supply network. We work in the verticals of coffee, chocolate, nuts, and fruit. And it's been a labor of love to build this company and really show, I think, larger businesses that sustainability and doing things correctly with farmers and planetary outcomes at the forefront can be a viable business model.
And Heather's Brave Day Coffee won the Nexty for best coffee at the show.
We did. Yes, well, for best people forward product.
We've got some absolute stars today. So let's kick right into it. I think the first natural question is like, when we got together post Expo West, it was March. I believe the SVB situation was unfolding while folks were on the ground in Anaheim. And so obviously there was a particular mood for the conference. And I think I'd love to sort of hear from anyone that was physically on the ground at East, like how was the tenor of the room at East this year, and how have things sort of evolved since we last connected around West?
If you want, Mike, I could kick that off. So
Yeah, please.
I spent my entire time walking the show floor with our new clients and also seeing our brands that we're exhibiting. So I had a lot of time to interact. I think going into the show a few weeks in, there was, definitely conversation. Is the attendance going to be down? Not as many booths got filled as I think we all thought, including New Hope. But once that memo went out and the news went out about being the last expo, I started to see people saying they're going. Can they get tickets last minute? It's the last one. They don't want to miss it. So definitely that first day, everyone I think was a bit surprised, but also very happy it was so crowded. So Thursday was a robust day in the trade show floor to kick it off. Everyone kind of felt that energy. We had a Naturally Network party that night at the Reading Terminal, which was awesome. About 600 people came. Very festive. Definitely feels like the tides have turned. There is more money trickling in now than there was, back 6 months ago at Expo West. So that seems like it's, that turns tiding or tides turning better for, brands that are raising capital. But I definitely saw, and felt that this show had, the settings for what's going to be a big discussion over the next year and years to come, in particular from both New Hope and from the Naturally Network, which is all about really conscious businesses, the businesses of the future. And you saw Jay Shetty's keynote on Saturday was all about purpose, leading with purpose. He's got the #1 podcast in America right now called On Purpose, and he has a brand called Junie, which is a very purpose-driven brand. But we saw also, even in Pitch Slam, which was super exciting on Wednesday, all of the brands really kind of embodied these conscious business values from passion, purpose, people, planet, and prosperity. So these are kind of like a messaging system that's going to go out and conversation that's going to be had at the highest levels of New Hope, especially as they talk about next August and the show there and the brands they're going to select for that smaller show in Georgia called Newtopia. It's going to really be focused on brands that are kind of the next gen founders that are leaders in doing things like Jasberry and GoodSAM are doing, good in the planet, good for the people, things like direct trade, fair trade, B Corp, really embodying the very best businesses that their brands can be. We see that's the future of the industry, and it kind of felt like that in many of the higher meetings I was in with some of the New Hope and Naturally Network folks. So I'm super excited for 2024, especially Expo West. I think it's going to be on friggin' fire.
Amazing. Jay, I know you mentioned that you had some thoughts from like the service provider or vendor perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the feel of Expo East, I mean, I definitely felt that it was extremely lively. Like we just spoke, our team spoke to so many emerging brands. They brought the energy. It was definitely an entertaining event, I would say, exciting event and engaging. I mean, we had so many good conversations with so many brands, and compared to West earlier in the year where things were just a bit more uncertain, this just felt significantly more lively. And as Eric said, I mean, there were so many folks there. And I was actually one of the few people, or many people, that actually bought a ticket while being there, as Eric had mentioned. So definitely felt like the attendance, knowing that this was the last show in Philly, moving down to Savannah, brought a huge crowd, I'd say.
Very cool. All right, one question sort of to get into the more detailed piece, like from some of the brands, obviously there was a note of optimism in the room. Obviously that doesn't sort of negate sort of the headwinds that folks are feeling. So as folks that spoke to brands on the ground, what did you guys see as sort of the biggest pain point for the brands that were on the ground at East? What are they sort of citing as something that's keeping them up going into Q4 and beyond?
Can I just say before anybody says anything, money?
Yeah.
It is definitely funding. 100%. I think every founder right now, every small and medium enterprise is struggling with access to capital. Whether equity focused capital or lending, debt-based lending, it's very, very difficult right now for founders to find that. And I'm really encouraged by groups like TIG and Elliot Began and his work, really developing alternative financing models for smaller companies. That's going to be the thing that is going to transform our industry. I think the days of VC and PE and these fast, heavy, high returns are over. And we've got to start kind of facing that as an industry, especially on the natural product side. I think food has lost a lot of funding in the last 2 years. We've seen whole funds go out, as a matter of fact, or whole funds pivot their strategy and say, we're not going to finance food anymore or beverage. And so I think we have to come together. One of the big takeaways was like yes, wallets are opening, checks are being written down, but they're a different climate. It's a different way of having to take in that capital. And it's one that we do have to face. We can't keep saying that it'll be the same, or, it's going to be exactly how it was before. That ship has sailed.
Totally. Neil, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, just to add on to Heather's point, I think people are having to build a real solid business now. Before it was easy to get funding, it was easy to never have to make profit. You can still sell the brand, there was a good valuation. And now we see the brands like Oatly and the Beyond, of the world, right? Crashing. And I think people are starting to understand that you really need to build a solid, sustainable business. And it's even more important what Eric mentioned about purpose. Because when a brand has its purpose and it's, built on strong fundamentals, it has real consumers, right? It's not a trend thing. Purpose is something that I believe is permanent. So it's like a North Star for the brand, for the product. And I think consumers today, they're looking for that, and the retailers and so forth. So I think, yeah, like to Heather's point, the pain point is you gotta build a real business now that is sustainable in every sense of the word, including financial.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth pressing into those points just a bit. Like, obviously, the funding environment has changed. How do brands in the space, like in the emerging space specifically, how should they be thinking about fundraising? Heather, you talked a bit about alternative financing options. Like, what do you guys think is like the path forward for a brand that's looking to raise either their first round or just looking for like initial access to capital?
Yeah, I think it's focused on profitability. To Neil's point, it's building these sound business models that focus on profitability. I think also, protecting your brand, your IP, whatever it is that you're doing for brands like myself and Neil, right? We're really hitching our cart to the wagon of, sustainability, fair worker equity, regenerative agricultural outcomes, climatary outcomes, right? Where we can also access funding on the outside from impact funds, NGOs, government. We're able to do those things and be really agile doing it. Not every brand can say that. And you want to be authentic in that too, right? You don't want to just, I see a lot of brands that come to me, they're like, well, we're just going to say we support regenerative ag. It's not that easy. You've got to find the authentic point that resonates for your company in order to be more creative, right? But make sure it's authentic to you. If you don't understand it, you don't know it, start building that. It's okay to be where you are, but you can't like jam yourself. It's like when you're a little kid and you're trying to put the square peg in the round hole, right? You've got to be able to really be able to fit that piece in. So making sure that you're authentic to yourself, but also looking on the outside, looking to alternative financing vehicles, which I think I think debt too is a better option, long-term debt if you can get it. Finding angels and investors who are willing to give you a longer-term loan that they're able, that's what TIG is doing, and I think it's really cool to say, hey, within this many years, you're going to be able to get your capital back plus a smaller return. But for a lot of people, a lot of those angel checks that can be very alluring, right? Because the what they can make in the market and what they can make potentially with your company, if they're willing to take the risk, can be potentially bigger.
Mike, I could just add, if even 5 years ago, if you were talking to a young founder about debt, you said debt financing, they wouldn't understand what that means for the most part. This means, oh, you mean I got to take a loan out from my bank, Wells Fargo? Is that what you mean by debt? No. The landscape now, of course, with Ampla and Dwight Fund in New York City and many others, debt is like the new cool way to finance your company. And I don't think there's anything wrong right now. And of course, it's totally up to the founders on what they want to take on and risk. But there's more debt capital and there's more creative ways to get debt capital right now than ever before, often even without personal guarantees and other things that used to be very prohibitive in the past to a founder with investors. So we're suggesting, with the brands that can find that avenue for debt to take on as much as possible right now in this climate, because valuations are still punishing, and a lot of them are based on EBITDA or expected EBITDA, not just the goal of some big revenue multiple in years. And I said the other thing and this wasn't something also just a few years ago founders would talk about, they have to be able to demonstrate and talk about eloquently and smartly a path to profitability. So I'm sure most of our friends on this call that are in year one and as a brand do not have profitability coming at the end of this year, but they need to talk as if to every single investor and constituent that's going to invest in them, that there is a path with their business to profitability. And what we're usually seeing is articulating that within like a 36-month window. So if you're doing a set of projections for 5 years, you're raising capital, okay, it's probably not going to be the end of year one or even month 24, but 100% by month 36 in year 3, the founder should be able to pick a point in their P&L that could say, this is the quarter we turn a profit. It may be a goal right now, but investors need to hear that.
Yeah, and I think Canal just put up a thing in the chat about realistic profitability, because again, you guys, like the days of VC and those overinflated, I think, top lines, overinflated bottom line is not a good idea either. So really making sure that that path to profitability is realistic, it is strategic, you've really thought about it, you can really speak intelligently to it. I think that is something that, of course, we heard on the show floor. We are seeing in a lot of meetings with investors, everything from private angels all the way up through PE, family office, VC, institutional, right? Everybody wants to see founders really understand that point. Maybe to their detriment eventually, because if you're profitable, you know, you can use different paths. But I think it is paramount that you start thinking about that as a founder.
For sure. I think along the lines of profitability, it sort of dovetails nicely into this next question. So I think one of the big promises of direct to consumer was that it would preserve profitability for brands. However, in the CPG space, specifically food and bev, it's been much more challenging to make direct to consumer work, just given the nature of the product, the price points. Obviously, most of the folks on this panel do not sell primarily direct to consumer or e-com, but I'm wondering, like, for brands in the space, like, what role do we think direct to consumer and e-commerce play into the future? It's obviously quite different than, let's say, like a beauty brand or an apparel brand, but specifically for food and bev, like how should we be thinking about it?
Mike, I can take that one. So,
I mean,
it's a great question. I mean, I'm lucky enough to talk to so many CPG brands where direct to consumer was really not part of their initial plan, but we've just seen it become a very important piece of their revenue channels. And it may not be the primary channel, but it still does carry so much value to the brand itself when they have an online presence. And we've seen brands just get creative with it. Some of them offering subscriptions, some of them not offering 60, 90-day supplies worth of X. And it just becomes, I wouldn't say something that you should have, but it actually almost becomes necessary in a lot of instances. So as long as it's there and it's done creatively in a good way, there's a plan behind it. It's not just like a website up and running and products available to be sold. We've seen brands transition into Amazon more now than really ever before, which is really cool. But definitely something that we see a ton of value in, and our partners do as well.
Can I just add to Jay? I think you want to go, Heather?
I was just going to say, you know, we're really, you know, Eric, we're really challenging this model. And so at GoodSAM, we don't believe that every product belongs in every channel. And when we analyze the numbers on things like Amazon or Thrive Market or any, even our own e-com platform, the numbers have to work, right? I think founders often think, or brands often think, like, okay, well, my whole portfolio has to be in every channel and every retailer. No, it doesn't actually. You can decide what is best for your business and get.
So Heather fell off. She's in a little bit of bad reception. She's actually at a VC conference in San Francisco for purpose and mission-based investors. But anyways, what her story was is she spent the first year partnering with Thrive Markets as her only sales partner. And so that proved out really good for the brand to get to learn its consumer very closely and the buying patterns, and also get that feedback before launching in retail in year 2. So, Jay, to your point, it's not just about, oh my God, I've got to go on Shopify and Amazon day one, which a lot of young founders, first-time founders think that means e-commerce. E-commerce does not mean just that. There's plenty of great e-tail partners from Thrive Markets, including every large retailer, whether it's Walmart.com, Target.com, they've got their own e-tail sites too. We have brands that are on Target.com that aren't in Target. So I think, getting creative and finding out how you touch your consumer, and maybe spending 6 months prior to an actual retail launch, where once that spend starts, you can't really shut off a distributor and shut off a sales team. You can tweak around with online and D2C much more easily, and it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, sorry guys, my internet is not my own, but thank you, Eric. And I think the only thing I wanted to add to that, Eric, was that not every product belongs on every e-com channel. You've got to make sure your margins are strong, especially in places like Amazon, where you will get raked over the coals now in food and beverage, where margins are already typically pretty thin. So just be smart about what you're putting on what platform. Be smart about what you're putting in retail too, because not every product belongs in retailer.
For sure. Sort of pivoting a little bit, I think obviously Expo East, Expo West had become known primarily for the food and bev space, but we've been seeing a lot of beauty trends popping up as well, both as beauty standalone products, but also like beauty as it pertains to even food and bev products. So functional foods that enhance skin or the like. What did you guys see as it pertains to sort of the convergence of beauty and food and bev, or just the establishment of beauty at Expo this year?
Well, Mike, I love what I see going on in the beauty space right now. And just, when I started my career, I was on the executive team for Desert Essence, which was one of the first natural beauty brands that sold jojoba oil and tea tree oil. This was back in '97. So watching this whole category emerge and grow the way it has over the past 2 decades has been incredible. I would have never expected it would have got as plant-based as it is, but the 2010s were all about plant-based, whether it's food tech plant-based or whole food plant-based, and that has its own divide amongst themselves. That's what played out last decade. This is the decade of plant-based beauty. So you've got brands like, at the Pitch Slam, if folks saw the Pitch Slam, we had an amazing brand, Root and Splendor, up there on stage, and, a laundry brand. So when you think about beauty, what goes on your skin, it's still the clothing you wear, the sheets you sleep in, the towels, that's all part of the beauty experience, completely plant-based. She did phenomenal. It's such a purpose-based story. But we also have one of our MO fellows from Nat Network on the show floor that's getting a lot of attention. It's a brand called Pure Midi, based in New York City, and she's powered by Ayurveda. So she's just taking basically the most, powerful plant-based Ayurvedic ingredients that have been used in beauty in India for centuries, and bringing that now to the United States into the mainstream, beauty category. And so we're seeing what I saw on the show floor with any of the beauty aisles I went to is there's a lot more powered by plants, and plant-based being the new thing, which I think is just awesome, because if you're eating plants, why don't you wear plants as well?
Totally. Anyone else on the beauty point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely right. I mean, we've just continued to see a focus in the better for you, better for the environment movement that we've just seen for the last decade plus, and just so many cool, new, innovative ingredients being included, and less some of the more harmful ones. It's almost rare to see non-eco-friendly packaging being used nowadays, which is great. But now we're seeing similar effects to the ingredient list, where we're seeing more natural plant-based products or plant-based ingredients and other types of healthier options being included in some of these beauty and health brands. So definitely all great things.
As it pertains to, sort of touching on the sustainability piece and digging in a little deeper there, like obviously that's been an umbrella term for the entire category for a long time, and across many different categories. Like what is like, how has that evolved? How has that gotten more intricate in time? Like when we say sustainable or better for you, what's sort of the new, like what's in and what's out, or what is table stakes versus what is the nice to have now, as the space has sort of evolved and gotten much more sophisticated?
Mike, if I could just kick off, and then I think really both Jasberry and GoodSAM should talk to it, because they are truly embodying sustainable brands of the future. But sustainability, like 20 years ago when I got into it, it was just something you said, but there was no way to prove it. So it was a lot of, maybe it's greenwashing. There was organic before there was organic rules, and we all said we were organic until we had a certification in 2002 with the USDA. That whole decade of like the 2000s was the first time certifications became available, whether it's non-GMO project, B Corp, carbon neutral from native energy, and others like that. It was the decade where all the certifications finally became available. So when a brand said, hey, I'm sustainable, or I want to be sustainable, all right, well then put your time and effort and money where your mouth is, brand, and go get those certifications done, put them on the packaging, and then proudly talk that talk to everybody, all your consumers, all your buyers. And that's how the industry will evolve, authentically with real certification behind it. So it's not just enough, I think, to say you're a sustainable brand. I think you've got to prove it now. And I think Heather and Neil are two exemplary models of sustainable brands that have proven it with a lot of hard work. So maybe you guys want to chime in a bit.
And just to add to that, Eric, so January next year, January 2024, a law will be passed. So basically, an ESG law. So basically, if you're making wrongful claim on your packaging, whether it's for social or environmental impact, right, you can get sued. So basically, starting in January next year, it'd be a legal issue. If you're just saying you're a sustainable brand and you can't prove it, like you're saying, let's say you reduce water usage by 30%. So really, already we're seeing lawsuits in Europe and in various other parts of the world. So they're really, I think the ESG will become eventually the new kind of financial metric that will be measuring the brand. But also to your point, Mike, I think also when we talk about like today, even the products we make, right? You really gotta
Heather?
Oh, we lost.
He's
Okay,
in
all right.
He's in Thailand right now.
We're both
Sorry.
having.
He's
Sorry,
back.
I know we're
Zoom
both.
crashed
Oh, go
sometimes.
ahead. Keep going. Neil.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead,
Pause
Neil.
that
Go
you
ahead.
really
Yeah.
gotta,
Go
and
ahead.
then you paused.
I'm just wrapping it up now.
Yeah.
So also there are, basic thing like when we develop product, right? Things like protein, sodium, low sodium, and this kind of thing are like a minimum requirement now. So if you walk into Costco and those kind of store, right? Those are the things you see, like sodium content, protein, sugar. So I think those has just become like kind of the minimum requirement. And on top of that, I think the ESG, the sustainability part has to be really strong. And to Heather's point, it has to be authentic. And that's what separates you from everyone else.
I think when we talk about ESG, sustainability, circularity, regenerative, wow, what a word used by everybody now. As an industry, what we have to start understanding is that what's on the ground is very different than the reality of the label that you're putting on the product. And, people like Neil and I know this because we spend a tremendous amount of time, and our teams spend a tremendous amount of time on the ground with farmers who are battling climate change in a very, just in unimaginable ways, right? We're doing something and we're seeing something on the ground that is so unimaginable. And, I was at Climate Week before Expo East, and the two discussions were so different. Right. At Climate Week, it was about, oh my God, we're going to have 2 more degrees Celsius and the planet is going to start to light on fire. And at Expo East, we were, doing a lot of patting of ourselves on the back for like what we've done. Food companies, beverage companies, beauty companies. If I said to one of the New Hope reporters, if every single company on this show floor right now did one thing on climate or worker equity or the payment of their supply networks, we call them networks at GoodSAM. If we all did one thing, the ripple of that would be so massive, right? You don't have to do what Jasberry is doing. You don't have to do what GoodSAM's doing. You don't have to make it like every single thing that you're doing. But if we do not start tackling this from the business frontier, we are seriously screwed on so many levels. So, you can think about your profitability, you can think about your top line, you can think about all that stuff. Great. Whole Foods, awesome. But if we don't actually start doing something as business leaders in this space to meaningfully change something on one of those frontiers, we will have no businesses. There will be the supply. the fragility of supply right now. If you're a founder who's not thinking about your supply, who is not investing in your supply, who is not putting backing behind your supply, you will not have a business within the next 10 years. That is how severe climate will become to business, to commerce, to government, to countries around the world. And, I know I sound really bombastic about that and very dramatic, but you see Neil shaking his head, because when you spend time on the ground watching the outcomes, low yields, the struggle and suffer, knowing and understanding that the average median age of a farmer is 58 years old around the world. We are losing farmers at an alarming rate. And then you think about going out to start a food and beverage company. Yeah, you better start thinking deeper about what you're doing, who you're working with, how extractive that model is, or how progressive that model is. Do one thing. Do one thing. That is my big takeaway from Expo, right? Stop playing into the trends and do one thing that is going to meaningfully change something.
And like, just to add to Heather's point, how important that is, there are 500 million smallholders farmers on the planet, right? Earning less than $2 a day, right? In Thailand, 40 cents a day, right? You think that children want to be farmers? No,
Yes.
right? Heather said the median age is 58. In Thailand, it's like 65, right? I'm working with some farmers who's like 78, right? Still waking up at 4 a.m, growing rice, right? Doing back-breaking work. And a big part of the mission of Jasberry is to bring their children back home, to bring them back on the farm, to create a model, because we want to have a business, like Heather said. Like in 10 years, who's going to be growing this crop? And on top of that, right, with the global warming situation, we have some of the biggest brands in the US, right? They're going to China, Southeast Asia, right? They just can't find supplier anymore. So, they have all the money, right? They have the brand, but they don't have supply. And ultimately, what ends up happening is they will start cheating consumers, because they have to make the product somehow, and it's going to be made from something, but it's not going to be made from what they say it's made of, because they just can't supply. So I think that's a serious complication for the consumers too, because what are you eating, right? You know what you're putting inside your body, right? And I think that is so scary if you're on the ground. Like, it's just like Heather said.
No, it's really, really,
And food tech won't save us. Yeah, food tech won't save us, you guys. Like, a lot of people say to me, like, oh, we'll do food technology, we'll build a factory in the middle of Iowa. I'm like, great. So a tornado, climate will come for all of it, you guys. So, like, we've got to start thinking, we've got to start asking ourselves better questions. I started to hear better questions on the show floor at this particular expo. And, really founders challenging themselves to say, okay, I've got this. How do I challenge this model? How do I ask better questions? How do I connect to something? We're very deeply disconnected from our supplies, and for the natural products industry to be as deeply connected as we are from supply, that's something that we as an industry really need to work on.
No, for sure. This conversation is obviously something everyone's super passionate about. Heather, you talked about, like, I think when folks think about a lot of these challenges, and you've described them in great detail, like, it can be overwhelming. And I think some folks do think about, like, the costs associated. We talked about regenerative agriculture, and, like, investing in that can sometimes connote really large capital expenditures. You talked about, like, the one thing, right? Like, what is like one small thing that even, like, the smallest of brands can start thinking about today that would make a difference in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, you can think about, more sustainable packaging. You can think about knowing one ingredient supplier in your supply, right? Digging deep, even if you're buying through middlemen, saying, hey, where are you guys getting it from, right? There are some really reliable middlemen in the natural products industry, like Trodden or Smirks, or, there's some people who are really doing some amazing work out there that will open the door to you to say, hey, yeah, if you want to supply, let us hook you up. You can travel there. One element, right, which will start to open your mind and start to open, your eye to what is actually happening on the ground. That can fundamentally really change something about your business, and maybe even about the way you message your business, right? So don't greenwash it, right? Because we all have cell phones now, and that transparency, we have to protect it like it is sacred, right? It is a sacred thing, transparency, and you will be found out if you are lying about it. And to Neil's point, the ESG rules that are coming out are going to be very, very strict starting in January of next year. So don't do that. Just find that one bit that you can do and come talk to people like Neil and myself and our staff at GoodSAM, other people who are doing it, to say, look, this is what I've got. I don't know what to do. Like, help me find the one thing that I can do right now, right? And we're happy to sit with you, for a coffee or something and say, hey, start there, or let me introduce you to so-and-so or so-and-so to try to get you closer to course.
Mike, if you're creating a brand for the first time, whether it's food, beverage, or any of the beauty brands of today, I think the easiest thing, the one easiest unifying thing, is to be organic from the outset. When I started Steez in 2002, people would say, why would you be organic? No one's going to drink an organic soda. There's only 3 companies that even provide flavors or ingredients that are organic. Now founders are saying, why wouldn't I go organic as a brand? There's plenty of supply. Yes, premiums may be slightly now 5 or 10% different. They're not where they were when I started Steez at 20, 30% different in terms of conventional versus organic. So organic is probably the easiest thread because the supply chain is so robust after 2 decades. Any of those brands in those 3 industries can get into organic and meet the 95% goal, unless they're using something that's not 95%, but then it just has to be natural and clean and meet the NOP rules. So that to me is like the first stake in the ground. I'm organic. And, there's a terrible statistic out of India, and it's one of the largest countries in the world for farming, but there's a thread. The statistic is, in India, every 20 seconds, a farmer commits suicide. Every 20 seconds. The thread is, these are all farmers that work on Monsanto farms for Monsanto seeds, not the organic farms. So my wife has spent the last 30 years trying to change the supply chain in India from cotton that's Monsanto seed to organic regen cotton. And the reason they're committing the suicide is because the health effects. They're getting the cancers, all the chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides are killing the farmers. The suicide's the way out because there's no hospital for them to go to. So that's how serious it is. Death versus non-death, health versus no health.
Totally. I think we're slated to wrap at 1:50. So I think, Adrian, I have a couple more questions, or do you want to pivot to QA and make sure we have enough time for that?
If anyone has any questions, they're welcome to drop them in the chat, but I would proceed with your remaining questions for now.
Yeah, so I think the last few questions I had, obviously we're in October. A lot of the brands, I was a founder of a brand not in the F&B space, and so I spent a lot of my time this time every year thinking about Christmas and holiday. Obviously, that's somewhat different in the F&B space depending on where you lay. But like, how are we seeing brands like thinking about the fourth quarter? Like, what are the areas of focus if it's not holiday gifting, which tends to be obviously a big thing? Like, what is the focus for Q4, or what should it be for brands in the space?
Well, from not the perspective of probably Jasberry and GoodSAM, many of the brands that we're working with, they've already got, obviously assuming they've got their holiday stuff all set, they've met the planograms or resets, and that's all done. That's a best practice. It's the worst time of the year, pretty much except for August, to raise capital because things start shutting down around Thanksgiving, and investors generally aren't doing due diligence between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So that kind of whole 5-6 weeks is shot. So use that time to plan, because we're pretty much always fundraising as founders in the early years. Let that be the planning phase. So Q1 comes in, January comes in, you're going to the gym, you're making your resolutions, you're starting whatever. That's also the time to kick off fundraisers. So we see a lot of good activity coming back in. Funds have to deploy capital at the beginning of the year. So just think about that also. This is, capital's fresh again for many funds. Also, it's a time to think about innovation. We always like, if it's a brand I'm involved in, using Q1 as the launch pad for new products. So they get in the cycle of distribution by spring. So we're, resets by kind of Memorial Day. So food and beverage brand, really be thinking about introducing your products after the first of the year so you can get that next 60, 70, 90 days into distribution to make the summer.
Totally. And I would be remiss to say, like, as you need capital to plan for those inventory buys, you should come find a partner like Ampla. Pardon the overt plug. I guess to sort of close it out, obviously this was the last Expo East. What do you guys think is sort of the legacy of Expo East? What has it meant to brands in the space, and like, what does the future hold? I know it's moving down to Savannah. Is it going to be the same format? What do you guys know about it? What did we think about it, and then what do we know about it, and how are you thinking about the gathering going forward? This is open to anyone.
I started my career at Expo East many years ago, and it was great. So it's the end of it's the end of an era for sure. And then I think the Newtopia is going to be really interesting. I think they're planning some really interesting things for small and medium-sized brands. And that's really, I think that this is going to be much more experiential from what I understand.
So there's still going to be 4 sections: food, beverage, beauty, and supplement, 4 brands. So they'll still have a much smaller trade show floor experience, more like the 6-foot tables, smaller booths, 10 by 10 max. But the brands that are invited across food, beverage, supplement, and beauty are going to be more of these, what we call conscious businesses like, really Jasberry and GoodSAM, living the ethos, walking the talk, doing good to change the world, embodying all these good values that we want to see as leaders in the industry, the next generation really embody. So that's what New Hope's going to put an emphasis on. Is it's not just going to be, you can just sign up, at random. There's going to be a lot of invitation to it. And I think also it's going to, just from the vibe, think TED Talk meets Summit Series, maybe a little Burning Man thrown in at nighttime, but it's going to be that kind of vibe where it's really about the experience, really about networking, getting close, bonding, because it is hard to do that at the 70,000 person Expo West, but that'll be Expo West. Will just be the one show focused on the big trade show. This will be much more intimate, and it's not going to be August every year. I know a lot of people have an issue with that date. It's just this year's going to be August, and then it's going to move to a different date, probably in September, October the next year.
Well,
sorry guys, I know I fell out again. You think I was in Ghana? I'm actually in California. So I do sometimes do these from Ghana, but I'm in California and there's terrible Wi-Fi. Look, I mean, Expo East is like the end of an era, right? Lots of founders cut their teeth in Expo East as like their first trade show, their first moment. So that'll be sad to see go. But I'm excited about what Eric just talked about, the experiential nature of Newtopia and what that will become for brands like GoodSAM and Jasberry. I think bringing some of the farm to a trade show floor is going to be a really interesting way to do things. And Neil, we should talk about that. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
for sure. Okay, I mean, that sort of concludes the QA section. You guys, that was honestly, not that I wasn't expecting this, but it was much more dynamic than I had anticipated. So thank you guys all for the participation, and thank you everyone for coming. Definitely want to save some time for questions if there's any questions at all, and I'm sure Adrian could also put you in touch with anyone individually if you're more comfortable touching base with them offline. But definitely want to cede the mic for questions.
I don't currently have any in the queue, but I will give a quick plug that the Naturally Network will be at Expo West and probably be hosting another event in partnership with New Hope and team. So be on the lookout for that as the time comes. And of course, we will also be at Newtopia. So be interested to see that, Savannah in the summer. Sounds fun. Anybody have anything they'd like to ask or share, just their own thoughts or insights on how the show was?
Adrian, just to share one thing, and it's about debt financing and Ampla in particular, it's kind of synchronistic. So a lot of founders, when I do talk about or mention debt financing as an option, they think they're too small. They're like, oh, I'm not, 200,000 a month in revenue yet. I haven't really got many seed rounds done. There's no way I'm going to get approved for debt financing. I was on the phone last night with a brand out in LA called Leisure, which is they just finished their first year in business, a beverage brand that's on fire. And he was talking about his financing all set. I said, where's your financing from? And Alex says, oh, it's from Ampla. You know those guys? I said, they really finance you at where you are right now. And, they're only, 75,000 a month in revenue, and they just did their first raise. So they've got some solid cash in the bank. But the fact that, they're only 1 year in and they weren't scared to talk about debt and learn about it. So I just welcome everybody. When I first heard about debt 15 years ago at Steve's, I was like, no way, I'm taking on debt. Don't be afraid of it. It's the new cool word in financing.
We would like to think so as well. Yeah, as always, if you guys have any questions related to that or how we could help, Jay or myself can assist you for sure. And thank you for that great plug, Eric. It's better than I could do.
Total synchronicity.
Agreed. We are definitely hearing that a lot on our end as well from the brand community. So we will be following up with some details of how to connect with Ampla following the call. I also just want to quickly mention, we are going to be hosting our next social event on Wednesday, November 1st. It hasn't been released yet or announced, but we will be finalizing the details today. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully you can join us. And we have some really great programming in the works up ahead. So very excited to share it with the larger community.
Including a year-end holiday party, right? For all of
Oh,
our
yeah.
members in Natural New York.
We're definitely going to have a big holiday party this year, probably double versus last year in size. At a really cool venue, but again, still
The trade show doesn't have to end when Expo ends. Keep it going in our community.
never. And we'll definitely be back at the Fancy Food Show again in June, hosting the Pitch Slam, and currently looking at some other trade shows to align to going into 2024.
Amazing.
All right, well, I don't see any questions. I'm happy to give everybody a little time back. Really appreciate our panelists and all the insights that you shared today. Thank you so much again. Love this group, love this team. And
Thanks, Adrian, for coordinating it all.
my pleasure.
Thank you.
Also acknowledge Jenna as well.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.